Each year, Microsoft Research hosts hundreds of influential speakers from around the world, including leading scientists, renowned experts in technology, book authors, and leading academics, and makes videos of these lectures freely available.
Good afternoon, everyone, and welcome. My name is Kim Ricketts, and I manage, along with Kirsten Wiley, the Microsoft Research Visiting Speaker Series. Today, we welcome David Allen here to campus to discuss all kinds of things and help us get more productive. But basically, we're here to talk about how do we excel in dealing with our daily commitments, the unexpected and the information overload that threatens to drown us on a daily basis. How do we figure out where we are in life and what we need to do to be successful? How do we move from hope to trust in decision-making, know when not to set goals, how to harness our intuition, and trust spontaneity? David Allen is here to share with us his ideas that with focus, control, and perspective, you can win at the game of work and the business of life. David Allen is the author of Getting Things Done and Ready for Anything, and the chairman and founder of the David Allen Company, a global management and consulting company focusing on developing personal and organizational capacity. In the past 20 years, he has developed and implemented productivity improvement programs for more than 1 million professionals and has been instrumental in assisting some of the world's premier companies to get things done. There's also an alias on campus, I was just found out, that's called, you can go, it's just GT Done at Microsoft.com, so if you want to join, that works on implementing the practices. Please join me in welcoming David Allen to Microsoft to discuss his new book, Making It All Work, Winning at the Game of Work and the Business of Life.
Delighted to be here. If I speak at this level, is that coming across to everybody back there okay? Good. I'd like to be as much of a resource as I can by 3 o'clock when the hook comes out and pulls me out of here. I feel best when I'm used. So please do not be shy. And I know Microsoft is a very shy culture. I've been around and these guys have... Anyway, so please feel free. What I'd like to do is give you a small kind of rap or shtick about the basic premise of the methodology that has become known as GTD. That was just an internal acronym for our little band of teams. It was easier to say GTD than Getting Things Done, and now, as many of you may know, there are, I think, over 160 software applications that have been designed specifically purporting to support the GTD model. So my first book is in 28 languages and 1 million copies have been sold now, and it's selling more every year. So it seems to have hit a nerve. A lot of this book that I've just written, Making It All Work, doesn't change any of that information. It reinforces it, takes it deeper and wider, and it's something about why that hits such a nerve. When people started to implement the best practices, and I'll find out in a second just how many of you may know what some of those are, some of you may not at all. But when you start to implement some of the simple things I'll be reminding you about and talking about in here, they seem like very simple little things to do, and they are. But the results of implementing them in a consistent, proactive, complete way are profound in terms of the results that happen. And so a lot of it is explaining and understanding myself in the last 10 years why that was true. Why the simple things called get stuff out of your head, make good executive decisions on the front end when things show up instead of when they blow up about what they mean, what you're going to do about them, organizing them in appropriate categories so they can be reviewed and reflected on quickly to see the whole inventory, why that can change your life. It can certainly change an organizational culture. We've seen that already. When meetings don't start without people going, excuse me, what time are we going to and what exactly do we need to accomplish by when? And they don't end discussions without going, wait a minute, what's the next step on this? What did we just decide, and is this yours or is this mine? That can change a culture. Can change, those of you who've been around the block know what I'm talking about. You know, you can change a team's culture, it can change a department's culture, it can change a whole organizational culture. Simple stuff. But we don't seem to have been born doing this. I don't know. Any of you hop out of the womb going, hi, what are we trying to accomplish? What's the next step? Yours or mine? No, this is learned behavior, which means if it's learned behavior, you can do it or not do it. Dude, nice to see you. You can do it or not do it, and you can learn it, not learn it. So it is something that you can learn. Not only can you learn it, but you can learn it and get better and better and better at it. As a matter of fact, you need to be these days. Because, folks, it's piling up as I speak. Just thought I'd remind you. What's different these days and why these kinds of simple behaviors are so profound is because I'm often asked these days, like, gee, David, what's new with technology and speed and, you know, in terms of anything new out there in terms of either the stress or the productivity game? And I say, well, nothing's new except how frequently everything is. My favorite saying now is that you and I'll bet for most every one of us in this room, in the last 72 hours, you and I have gotten more change-producing, project-creating, and priority-shifting information than our parents got in a month, some of them in a year. That's what's different. Now that kind of, by the way, any change in your world that has any meaning at all, meaning you have to integrate what that input is, means you have to reset your whole system personally. Any potentially meaningful input, you have to reset the whole system. Okay, now I need to take in that input, and I have to rethink the whole inventory and let it sift down again. That automatically creates a kind of a stress. It creates certainly cognitive dissonance when that happens. Whether it's experienced as a negative thing is whether or not, hey, how fast do you integrate the new material and then feel good now you've got to now reset game, as opposed to, oh, damn. You know, more stuff that I still am not avoiding deciding what it means and how to integrate it against the I don't know what all the other stuff is that, by the way, I'm probably not doing, but it might be more important than this interruption that just walked in my door, but I'm dealing with latest and loudest, so here's another one, why not? Oh, damn. Now, I know that doesn't happen at Microsoft, but in other companies you folks have come from, that's kind of the universal event out there. So the thing is, now you got to get real fast. Our parents, it just happened so seldom, they just tolerated that stress. You know, and then they could go for another year or two somewhat on cruise control. You know, we're living in it. We're living in it. So now we need this much more set of these best practices that can integrate all that. Basically, well, let me find out. Let me ask you a couple of questions here before you tackle me. How many of you in the room are already somewhat familiar with either the GTD model? You've either read my first book or you've been around this information. Somehow you say, yeah, I kind of know what GTD is and what it means. Who's in that category? Oh, we packed the house. Who's not? You're not even quite sure who I am or what this is or if this is the right room. Thanks. Well, about 50-50. So I'll speak out of half both mouths here, though the people who are already familiar with this aren't yet. Meaning, if you really got this, you got that you didn't get this yet. That there is a deep well to dig here. Me too. And boy, I am fellow student still. Because the better you get at this, the better you better get at this. Because when you start to work with what I'm talking about, what it does is it opens flow. It eliminates residue and drag on your system. Now, when you start to eliminate drag on your system, here's the bad news. You wake up inspired. Here's another idea. Oh, my God, we could do this. And your ability to give yourself a whole lot more to do than you could possibly do expands. So in a way, by the way, getting things done is not about getting things done, folks. It's about getting lost in whatever you're doing. That's all it is. All you want is to be lost in whatever it is you're doing. You just want time management. You're successful with time management when time is not. You can't manage time anyway. That's why there was never very good solutions, because people misidentified the problem. You folks are smart enough to know if you misidentify the problem, you're going to have a hard time finding a solution. And if the problem is time, hi, have a calendar and a watch. Well, you got that. What's the issue? Time's not the issue. What you do with yourself during time is. Time is a constraint, absolutely. And if you're in the materiality of time and space, you damn well better understand what time is. So you need to understand what it is, but you don't mismanage 5 minutes and come up with 6. Right? Time is not what you manage. Gee, I want another hour of my day. What the hell would you do with it? Let yourself have that many more emails you do instead of being in the meeting you're supposed to be in? Sure. So that's not the issue. There's a great, I think, Stuart Emery, great personal growth axiom out there that you can never get enough of what you don't really need. So you can never have enough emails because emails are not what you need. You can never work hard enough or enough hours, folks, because working hard enough or hours are not what you're really after. So what? Out of all that, well, let me give you the basics. The basics of GTD, frankly, get every commitment or potential commitment out of your head, out of your psyche, in some externally trusted bucket. Make good executive decisions about what exactly that means and means to you. That is, what outcome you're committed to, what action step you need to take if it is an actionable item. You need to organize the results of that thinking into coherent categories so that you can then, stage 4, step back and reflect on all of that inventory on a consistent basis, holding up against the ad hoc stuff coming at you so you can evaluate the previous set of all your commitments, so that then stage 5, you trust your intuitive judgments about which call to make, which email to send, or whether to have a nap or a beer. That's essentially the essence of the workflow aspect of this. And then, of course, you have the other side of this that says, yeah, and how do I decide whether to have a beer or a nap or write the email or the phone call? Ah, well, that's where you then need the other half of the equation, which is perspective. And in a larger sense, that just means, look, I've got to understand what my commitments are at all the horizons that I've got commitments, and hardwire my intuitive judgments so I trust my gut when I run into the world. So basically, that's what I did, and this is advanced common sense. This is not, I didn't wake up someday with an epiphany and come up with some new foreign language or technology nobody knows. I just started to recognize what it is that we all do that really works. And then I just made people more conscious of that experience, so that once you're more conscious of what the principle is that makes that thing that works work, you can work it better. See, most of you just work. You don't maybe yet understand the art of work. You just work. It's like salespeople. I just sell. But there is an art of sales, and there is a sales process. There's also an art of work, and there is a work process. So I don't need to know what the content of your work is, because I know what the work process is, and all I have to do is go in and let you take your work, and I will walk you through the work process, and then we'll see what you experience after that. And I guarantee you, without exception, people feel more relaxed, more focused, clearer about what they're doing, more trusting their intuitive judgments about what they do once they do this set of simple little behaviors. And we all do it to some degree. Oh, come on, how many of you in here have ever had your back up against the wall, you felt stressed and overwhelmed, and you sat down and you made a list and you felt a little bit better? Anybody ever do that? Well, if you'd figured out why that works, if you actually did a little reverse engineering, you would never keep anything in your head the rest of your life. Think about it. Nothing changed in your world, but you just felt a whole lot better. Why? Because what you did was externalize those agreements with yourself so you could go look at them and renegotiate them with yourself. So, well, look, if that's true, why do you wait until you feel really, really bad to do a little bit of something that makes you feel a little bit better? If that's the source of how you feel good, just feel good all the time. No, really. So I keep no commitment in my head. Once you figure this out, why would you? If you know that keeping it in your head does not work, that it feels better to externalize it. So, I'm sorry, this is the big duh. So I just figured out what that principle was. I figured out the principle about why stuff is still on your mind too. And it's not because it's unfinished. It's because you haven't clarified exactly what your commitment to it is, what outcome there is, and what action step you need to take, and you haven't parked the results in some place your brain trusts that it'll see at the right time. That's why it's on your mind. So there's a lot of stuff in your life not on your mind. Why? Because you've made the appropriate decisions about it you think you need to, and you've parked the results of that decision making in a systemic way that you trust is working. The only things that are on your mind are the things that you have not either made the appropriate decisions about, or you haven't parked the results of that in some trusted way. That's why there's an inverse relationship between on your mind and getting done. So if you listed the top 10 things on your mind right now, I'll feed back to you 10 things that are stuck and you're the bottleneck. Now, that's not judgment. That's just, hi, that's the truth. Why is that still on your mind? Well, because... Anyway, so out of all that, now somebody just described somebody did a nice review of the new book against the first book, and they said, what's the difference? And they said, well, the first book is kind of like more for the left brain side of you. It's a good tactical manual for the engineers about how to get workflow handled and under control. There's a workflow diagram in there that'll give you a decision tree about how to empty your in-basket, what decisions you need to make, where to park them. So I've had people literally just stick that up in front of their desk for 2 or 3 weeks to learn that process. This book is more on the right brain side that says, wait a minute, there is a whole lot bigger thing that happens when you handle the things that give you the 2 aspects of self-management. The 2 aspects of self-management. For the visually hungry, those of you. Control, perspective. Any of you ever been in a situation, project situation, team situation, kitchen situation, where you said, wait a minute, we need to get organized and get focused? It's a very simple way to say, wait a minute, we need to get the world in control so that we can guide the ship, and we need to point the ship in the right direction. No kidding. But it's two admonitions, not one. That means there's actually two different dynamics, and that's what I discovered. Organized, that's too simple a word, because essentially organization, what I discovered, is only stage 3 of the 5 stages of how you get control of anything. And getting control, that could be truly of an agenda for a meeting. It could be handling dinner for friends coming over. You just found out, oh, but surprise, oh, wait a minute, the kitchen's out of control. Dinner is out of control. We are out of control now about the kitchen and the dinner. And what do we need to do first? 5 stages. And then whether you should even cook dinner or not is going to be, perspective. In terms of what's important to us then out of all of that. And I couldn't get it any simpler. Basically, there are 5 stages to how you get control and 6 horizons of focus. I tried, folks. I am Mr. Lazy. That's why I did all this stuff, is I'm the laziest guy you ever met. I can't stop. I think if I'm going to walk out of this room, I'm going, okay, now if I walk that way, that'll take fewer steps than that way. No, I just went on a spiritual retreat in Northern California 3 or 4 weeks ago. And, for 7 days, my wife and I are going between this, this cottage that we're in to the sort of conference room where we're going to meditate and do all that good stuff. But oftentimes we have a short break. But the cottage is way far away. I like to know how absolutely long I can hang before I need to get up and start casually walking to the conference room. So the very first thing I did, because there were 2 options. I could walk that way or I could walk that way. One kind of goes down and around. Which one has fewer steps? And I literally counted them the first time I was there. So that for 7 days, I knew exactly what time I needed to wander out and still be afforded to wander, because I'm in spiritual stuff. Now, I used to think everybody thought that way. No, they don't, obviously. So I have, now I'm so lazy that my systems are all set up so I never have to have a thought twice. Nor do I have to rethink anything the same way twice. Come on, talk about lazy. How many of you keep finding yourself thinking about the same things in the same way over and over and over without making any progress in what you're thinking about? Yeah, excuse me. Come on, you're busy. Don't waste your time doing that. But you don't shut that little monkey up by just saying, I shouldn't be having those thoughts. You have to do what you need to do so the monkey will shut up. And that's just what I found out, what you have to do. So the 5 stages of control, 6 of perspective. By the way, any of you ever would say there's situations right now that need a little more control? Somewhere out there. Okay, well then, one of those 5 stages, if not all 5, are something you probably need to apply. How many of you say you're in situations right now that need a clearer focus about what you're doing and why? Yeah, well, then you need probably some version of this. But I can't get it any simpler. It's not just about go get organized and get focused. Yeah, right. That won't work that well. So the 5 stages of control, basically you need to capture anything that has your attention or the attention of whatever the enterprise is. You have to then clarify what exactly that means. You've got to make sure that email is not slipping out somewhere, and you have to then open that email and say, what exactly does that email mean to me? Is it an actionable email or not, yes or no? If no, is it something to delete? Is it something that I need to then stage for later review, or is it something I just need to store as reference? Second tier of executive decision making. If it is actionable, what is the very next action I need to take? And oh, by the way, is there some commitment embedded in this? It's going to take more than one action step. I better put that stake in the ground to then identify that commitment as well. And that's essentially how you clarify what an email or piece of paper or junk mail or magazine or conversation or idea you wake up with. You got to decide what that means. Now, once you decide that, then you organize it. Wow, that's the next step on mom, capture, mom. Have you ever write something like mom on a list? How many of you have something that sort of looks like a to-do list? 99% of every to-do list I've ever seen when I sat down to work with somebody is nothing but an incomplete list of still unclear stuff. Because what they tried to start with was that. And all you're doing is rearranging incomplete piles of unclear things. 98% of every Microsoft Outlook task list that I have ever opened up is an incomplete list of still unclear stuff that nobody wants to look at because it's just reminding them that there are decisions about it they're avoiding, and they don't want to be reminded of how tired they are that they don't have time and energy to think. That's the truth. So just the fact that you have a way to organize does not mean you are organized. So a lot of all that stuff, it just speeds things up. The computer is not designed to match how your mind thinks or how it should think. It's designed for once your mind has gone through all of that to then sort it in appropriate places, feed it back to you rapidly and quickly. And that's pretty much all the technology has done, is just speed that up. You know, no big paradigm change from my perspective, a few, but not much. Anyway, so that's organized. By the way, you can fill all that stuff out, but if you don't look at your list, you have then got to reflect on what are the 30 to 100 projects that virtually all of you have in here right now, and what are the 150 to 225 next actions right now that everybody in this room has right now just to move forward on commitments you've got with yourself and other people. So if you don't look at that stuff, if you don't look at your calendar, you're likely to miss some appointments. And if you don't look at what are all the projects you've got in your life, you're likely to get wrapped around the axle and be just battered around by latest and loudest out there operationally. If you don't take that 2-hour weekly review once a week and step back and catch up. All of that then comes down to, okay, how do I engage my resources? What do I do? So you could take any situation out there that you say it was out of control and we got it under control, and I could probably map to you did those 5 things in that order. Or you let me loose on anything that feels out of control, and that's exactly what I'm going to go do. I go back to your departments. First thing we're going to do is capture what's on the departmental mind right now. What's on the software group's mind right now. We're going to get all that out and then decide exactly what it means and sort it. Come on, this is just common sense stuff. Those of you who've been around the block and facilitated these kinds of thinking processes and decision-making processes, that maps to it. The 6, now once you get all that done, okay, now I got it under control, then I have 6 horizons. And I use, 50,000. I call them feet, but that's a little US-centric. So call them meters or 30, I don't know, whatever you say, well, just some sort of altitude analogy here. 50,000, 40,000, 30,000, 20,000, 10,000, runway. 50,000, purpose and principles. Why are you here? Why do you exist? The core questions and the core values you have. What's really important to you? You don't care where you work as long as what's true. You answer that question and you'll have answered what your values are, at least in terms of your career and professional world. So what's really, really important to you? Because that ultimately is going to give you the perspective. What's the perspective? Well, why are we in the room? That is going to help us figure out whether we're on course. You don't know what the course is, whether you're on or off it, if you don't know what the purpose is, what you're trying to do. But if you knew your life purpose right now and your core values, how much is that going to help you decide which email you need to write tonight first? A little bit. A little bit. It'll help a little bit more if you said, yeah, and my purpose fulfilled is going to look like wild success like this. I'm going to have this kind of job, and I'm going to live in this kind of house, and I'm going to have this kind of car, and I'm going to have this kind of opportunity, and I'm going to have this kind of influence in the world. That's right. Now you're down at 40,000 feet, which is basically vision. The operant question at 50,000 is why. The operant question here is what? What does it look like? That being fulfilled. So where does Microsoft want to be 5 years from now? What do you want? Where do you want to be? So career, all that. The reason you folks are sitting in the room is this somehow is mapping to some sort of vision you or other people have had around you. And that's just been reflected out here by what you're doing. So now if you knew that vision, is that going to help you decide which email to send? A little bit more. But you're probably going to need to then drop down to 30,000 feet. What's that? That's 3 to 24 month things you need to accomplish. So this would be you folks do annual goals, plans, stuff like that. That's 30,000 feet stuff. Okay, in order to have the vision happen, here's what we need to accomplish by the end of 2010 or 09. Or here's what needs to happen in the next 6 months. So that would be what usually sits in a standard kind of formats called goals and plans, at that level. Now, if you had your plans, everybody got 09 all put to bed in terms of your planning process? Well, if you don't, you're not going to know which email to send first. Because there's going to be a direct connection between that and, well, okay, which one's going to have the most strategic value and give you the most highest payoff toward those accomplished goals by that time. So that'll help you a little bit more. If that is real clear and you kind of put it to bed, what I mean by put it to bed, meaning you've clarified exactly what those goals are, what the action items are, and about each of the moving parts there and who's got it. and you built that in, then you're cool. So 20,000, this is one that people often forget. So the operant question here is, what do we need to accomplish? Why are we? What does it look like? What do we need to accomplish? And 20,000 feet says, what do we need to maintain? And 20,000 is an important area a lot of people forget. Eat lunch. Hold your assistant's hand because they're about to burst into tears. Back up your computer. Feed the dog. Right? Check the sprinkler system. Check your drainage system. I forget which place I'm in. Southern California. Okay, right. This is maintenance. And most of you have 4 to 7 things you need to maintain about your job, the things you will be expected to have done well. Research, strategic planning, asset management, quality control, customer service, staff development, etc. You don't finish those things. Those are just things you're held accountable to maintain at certain levels of standard, right? And that's a lot of what your job and your life is about. Your life stuff to maintain, health and vitality, your finances, your house, your household, relationships, family, recreation, personal expression, all that, whatever that kind of checklist is. And a lot of the things that you do are to maintain those things. Then you get to 10,000 feet. So now we got what do we need to maintain, but 10,000 feet says if I've had these discussions with myself, you're going to come up with a lot of things to finish. What do I need to finish? That's the operant question of 10,000 feet, projects. By my definition, more than one step things that you have committed to get finished within the next few days, weeks, or months. And most of you have 30 to 100. I've seen a few people with less. A couple of people I've coached at Microsoft had 140. But that's because they weren't delegating nearly as well as they could. And a lot of them just got given away once they really understood what they were about. And some people with less than that, students would sometimes have less than that, though if you call finish that class that I'm taking as a project, they've got a bunch there and a lot of things to do about the class. There's a report I need to finish, there's a thing I need to turn in, etc. So 10,000 feet, that's projects. Now you still haven't got anything to do. The doing comes down to here. Runway, what's that? Physical, visible activity. Email, phone call, talk to, buy nails, walk body, draft ideas, whatever it is. So now we're down to the physical level. By the way, you will notice it all comes down to what are you doing with yourself right now. But those are two very different dynamics, and each one of them, I couldn't get it any simpler than that. You try to simplify priorities without parsing it out into these critical different horizons that these things show up in, you're going to have trouble. So, as a matter of fact, that's the problem with all this whole issue of time management and prioritization. People have compressed this too much. And you compress it too much, the whole thing blows up. You can't just go get organized. You've got to capture and clarify before you can even start, and then you have to have a good review reflection process that iterates this thing constantly, and you have to stay deeply engaged with this before your organization system is going to serve the function it's designed to serve, which is the extended mind. So your mind is no longer now required to remember and remind. It's freed up totally to be making intuitive, spontaneous decisions and do incredibly creative stuff on a constant basis with nothing on your mind except fresh material. That's what your mind is for, and no system can replace that. A good systematic approach will give you the freedom to then be able to do that and to give you the trust that your decisions are not missing anything that needs to be considered. But that's really what you're after. Now, I shouldn't have told you all that because that's really all my book. But how many of you, I've already identified some things that you could probably spend some more time maturing in terms of how either those horizons or how you do this stuff. Yeah, boy, I mean, come on, now simple to describe now that I've seen it and, whatever, but in terms of how you implement this on an ongoing basis. But now, this book, Making It All Work, is really more this is about lifestyle stuff, folks. You can take a whole culture and think about what horizons are we focused on. Which conversation at which horizon right now in your job at Microsoft do you need to have with whom, at what level? Because I'll bet every one of you would say, wait a minute, there is some conversation we need to have right now. Maybe it's 20,000 feet, called my job description. Things have shifted around and I'm being asked to do a whole bunch of ad hoc stuff out there, and I'm not sure my boss and I are singing off the same song sheet about that. Maybe you guys need to sit down, wait a minute, can we just compare project lists? And hold that up against that plan that we're supposed to have. Well, maybe we need to think about the plan. whole lot of stuff's happened out there we haven't integrated into this, and we need to recalibrate this thing so this becomes a real thing that can help us decision make out there against all the more to do than I can do stuff. I don't know. So you get the idea. You can use this from a consulting model. These are different horizon and different conversations, but they're all critical. A whole lot of people are comfortable thinking up here, and then they don't tie it down to action items. And a whole lot of people like to be busy down here, and they don't tie it up to the more vision kind of things that keep it aligned so that there's creative stuff going on. Which then you will see a chapter in my book called The Fundamentals of Self-Management, which are the two aspects of control and perspective. And here comes my old consultant DNA oozing out right here. You're getting a 2x2. So let's map control and perspective. No control on the left, high control on the right. No perspective or vision on the bottom, high perspective and vision on the top. Let's map those together. Bottom left-hand quadrant, no control, no perspective. Who or what's that? That is your basic victim. Driven by latest and loudest. Bam, 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 survival modality. Right? Any of you ever find yourself there? Oh, come on, any of you ever come in early? I'm in early. Then the phone rings. Damn, somebody else is here early. Then somebody walks in. Damn, they never left. Oh, you know, and you came in and you're sitting on your game in about 2.6 minutes. You're out of control and have lost perspective. Now, that's not a bad thing. I'm there. If you're not there at least half a dozen times a day, you're stale, folks. One good creative thought, one good meeting, that's just one cool, neat surprise, one new opportunity can totally blow the heck out of my perspective and what I thought how I was going to spend the rest of the day. And now that's not bad. What might be is the improvement opportunity is don't hang there very long. You need to recognize, excuse me, I am now in victim modality. Good to recognize when you're there. Responding, essentially. To the large extent, it's just a responsive modality. Now, a lot of people go, oh my God, it's out of control. Oh my God, perspective. We need to get organized. Let's get some structure. Okay, cool. So then you hire somebody who's just really good at structure. So they come in and okay, let's get a policy here. Let's get a procedure here. That's screwed up. Let's get another policy. Come on, let's have some rules here. Let's get some regulations, and let's get really organized. The problem is if you have high control but no perspective, you then have your basic micromanager. Right? Any of you ever been in that modality? Oh, come on. How many of you ever avoided some key phone call and got more ready? We need to get more ready. This is not perfect yet. Let's get more ready. I need to get more organized. I need to get more data. Oh, you folks thought, oh, wait, there's not, we're going to get more ready. So then they go, well, gee, you know, now we just got a bunch of bean counters, but we now have no longer any beans to count. I guess we need a vision of beans. So now you go hire a visionary person, right? Now, if you happen to get one that's high on the vision scale but ain't got much of that control factor, you now have your basic crazy maker. Oh, here's an idea. Let's go do this. There's another one. Oh, here's absolutely no consciousness of constraints or resources. Now, some of you work for one. Some of you are married to one. Some of you are one. And we all move into that modality whenever you get some harebrained whatever, and you make everybody nuts around you. The crazy makers don't want to get organized because they look at these people and go, anal retention. That's too stifling. That's, ooh, God, ooh, don't, ooh. And the control people don't want to go take risks and set visions because, oh my God, they look at these people just creating nothing but madness and chaos around them. False polarity. There is an upper right quadrant. Captain and commander. You got your eye on the prize. You can see that horizon all the way across. So you got a light touch on the helm, and boy, you've got such a sensitivity. You can feel every single little recalibration that needs to happen because you got the big vision and you have the capability to move your focus to any single horizon as required, but not get hung up there. And we've all been there too. Time disappears. You're on. Now, if you could stay there the whole time, I doubt it. Again, we all fall off regularly. And by the way, this is not about personality, though different personality styles will tend to hang more on the vision side or the detail side, for sure. But you could be captain and commander on the golf course and a victim in the kitchen. No, true. And I know a lot of captain and commanders at work try to train their dog. They just lose it. Truly lose it. Right? Or you could start at 8 o'clock in the morning is a crazy maker because of 14 ideas you just woke up with from the dream state, you know, and then it's like, because you're making everybody crazy, you go, okay, I got to go sit down and go organize all this stuff, and suddenly none of that works because you got 2 new things that fell in, and now you're the victim of the whole game. You go, and then by 2 o'clock, you hold the world, you shut the door and go, excuse me, I go back and I'm back on. Now I know where I am. So this is just a map. So basically the new book is about that roadmap, so you can start to assess that. There's now a free site you can go on and for 5 minutes onto our site and take the GTDQ, the GTDIQ.com. Just go there and take a 5-minute survey. You'll find out where you are on that little matrix. Give you a dot. Also, based upon where you show up there, hey, here's some recommendations in terms of the best practices based on the control or perspective piece. Which one do you need right now? Some of you need more control, some of you need more perspective. Some of you need both. Me too. I'm constantly all over this map. Does that make sense, folks? Okay, so that's essentially kind of a lot of the totality of what it is that I came up with, you know, about all this stuff. Let me toss it to you, because there are as many different applications and implications of this as there are people sitting in the room, and maybe people watching this from all over the world. But you can be their proxy. What questions do you think they have, or that you folks have for me about any of this? I'm happy to share, you know, anything here. We got a little while, so. Yes, ma'am.
So, you know, we take this in, like I as an individual take it in and I learn it and I work with it and I use it for myself. I guess I want your tell me what happens. You work with so many companies. I started working this way. What kind of a disruption happens? How, you know, does it typically influence people around me to kind of do the same sort of thing, or is it considered out there? Do you know what I mean? Like, are you considered a disruptive technology when you start coming in doing this, or?
Yes. Well, potentially so. Interestingly enough, you don't have to, you know, if you come whacking in, I just read a book. I was like, oh, God, you know, because then you're the nut. You always go off-site, and, oh, God, here they come. You know, it's the new thing. So you're best off to just do the behavior and then watch what happens around you. The truth is, once you actually start to implement this, there is some bad news to this. Once you start to implement this, you'll notice very suboptimal behaviors you never cared about before that are really going to bother you. You'll notice when people say, wait a minute, what's the next step? You'll be sitting there talking to somebody, they're not writing anything down, and you know it's going into a black hole, right? So at some point, you know, we even now people are writing us, say, gee, David, you know, can you give us a list of GTD compliant companies? Because I'm really sick of anything without it. I'm not kidding. I'm not kidding. Because once you catch this, you move up to much bigger problems.
Is Microsoft on that list?
Well, there are probably as many Microsoft companies as there are people sitting in this room. Because you are as different from the people sitting next to you in the next cubicle as you are from Google to American Express to anybody else. Though different cultures will have different aspects of it that are pushing on the culture that everybody's having to deal with, but how people individually map to this stuff is very, very individual to the person. So I don't know. Yes. Kind of to both of that. It actually starts to become, it's really neat because it can start to smooth it out a ton. Because oftentimes, if you just don't, you know, you come and say, well, wait a minute, what are we actually trying to accomplish, you know, by what time in here today? What next step? I'm the dummy here. What did we just decide? Is that yours? Is that mine? And they see you writing it down. It starts to change things, especially when you start responding within 24 to 48 hours to every email.
And scare people.
Well, it actually doesn't scare them about you. It scares them about themselves. Most people really feel guilty about this. Most people, the worst thing about my job is nobody ever wants me to come to their office. Oh, Dad, don't come to my office. Come on, my office is a mess sometimes. Yes?
I sometimes hear about people, they say that they fall off the GTD wagon.
Yes.
I myself have fallen off the GTD wagon
Me
many
too.
times.
Absolutely.
Why do you think that happens, and are there simple things that we can do to bring ourselves back to the...
Yes. The good news about it is that it's very easy to fall off, and it's very easy to get back on. Kind of like having... Well, the model is not hard to understand, and it's pretty easy once you've laid that track. You need to have, I think, enough of a clear experience to begin with of actually tasting what it's like to be fully done. Very few people have done that. That's the main reason people fall off is they don't take this far enough, so they never are really able to trust the system. They still trust in their psyche. And if you still trust in your head, the system's not worth the effort. And watch the behavior. You'll stop using the system because it's not worth the behavior, because it's not giving you payoff. Wait till your head, see, when you're like me, I have to look at my calls list to know who to call because there's absolutely nothing on my mind right now. So the more complete the system is, the more you have to use it. If it's still a nice to have for you, forget it. I'd say don't even get on, much less fall off. Now that's a little old and cranky, but that's at 63 I discovered that's fun. So again, the cranky straight answer is, if you're not willing to do this 100%, don't bother doing any of it. It's not worth it. But wait till you taste what 100% is. It's such a different game. But most people just don't have a reference point about what it's like to truly be buried with an incredible set of responsibilities and truly have nothing on your mind. I started this whole session with, look, the purpose of all this is to give you the freedom to be totally lost in whatever you're doing. Whether that's washing the dishes, playing with a dog, writing software, designing the next company. That's my game. The strategic value of clear space was what I discovered years ago, and why I got good at this, because I discovered how many things screw up clear space, and I found out how to get back to it. So once you've tasted clear space and you know you have walked yourself through a model you could walk again, it's very easy to get back on. But those are some of the challenges, because people fall off, but they were never really on the wagon to begin with. So there is, to some degree, the more you can truly hold the world back and invest. My first book, this part 2 of getting things done, my first book, is our coaching process. So if you had the discipline to actually follow directions, just read it part 2 and just, now you're going to have to use paper, and that's going to hurt some of you. Yeah. Yes, sir.
I triage my to-do list, but the thing is, I always end up with a problem where I would check my to-do list, and I'm like, oh, I need to do this, but I'm like, I really don't feel like doing it right now.
Yeah.
And so like, I push it back till later. I'm like, okay, I'll do it next week.
Yeah.
So
Me too.
To-do list software actually has a convenient thing where you say do it later or something. And then next week it reminds, I check and it reminds me again. I'm like, I really don't want to do this.
Right.
So I just push it back. And then I get this huge pile of stuff I just procrastinated on. And
Why? Maybe that's just good intuitive judgment.
Well, like an example is like, for example, I need to fill out a form because I got a parking ticket, and like, I need to fill it out and pay it. But I'm like, this is really boring, and I don't want to do it.
Oh, well, grow up. Well, live and learn. That's what growing up is. You'll get slapped around for not doing it enough that at some point it's really going to hurt, and you go, damn, I should start doing those things more on the front end instead of the back. And once you get used to it, see, once you taste what it's like to have none of that pressure on you, then the biggest barrier to entry to implement and maintain any of this is people's addiction to stress. Your willingness to tolerate that stuff on your psyche is what allows that to happen. I'll tolerate just as much as my comfort zone will let me tolerate, no more. My comfort zone is if email has not gotten to 0 in the last 48 hours, I'm uncomfortable. Not in a negative way, but it's like uncomfortable, like, gee, I haven't taken a shower, I need one. So literally I clean up my in-basket and make those decisions. What is the next step on this? That has to be done by when? And I will avoid that probably as long as I can, but I better know as long as I can, and I better have that systemically managed.
I think the problem is that over the years, I think I've just built up more tolerance to these sort of things.
Yeah.
Like, so how do I guess, get to the state where you're describing, where
Yeah.
I have less tolerance?
Great question. Stick around me. No, come on, that's how you've all raised standards about anything, is you got around people who are mapping to those standards. That's called modeling and mentoring. That is the fastest way to get any up-level standard. And then learn from Madison Avenue. That's all. Billions of dollars, trillions of dollars probably every year is spent trying to get you to get so used to something in your mind you feel uncomfortable not having it. That's how they get you to do stuff you've never done before that's new behavior, is they sell you on that picture on the front end. So that's what I'm doing here, is I'm selling you guys it is possible. And you go, look, if that jerk can do it, I can too. So there's a believability factor by actually meeting me. Say, God, that guy's a real dude. You can see my list. You see exactly how I talk about it. And I can show you exactly how to get from here to there. That makes it a lot more believable for you to sell yourself you could have it. So that's stage one, is you got to understand, A, there is a place to get to, and B, you could do it. Those are the two factors before you're going to get motivated at all. And then stick around. Just stick around it. Get around it. That's, read the book, talk to people, map to people who are managing this stuff. And if I had a simple answer for that, here's a pill. That'll automatically get you to exercise. I wouldn't be standing up here, folks. Or maybe I would, just because I'm so gracious for my billions of dollars I've made. I don't have an easy answer, but that is the answer. You get around it, you start to lift that standard up, and pretty soon you just, you weren't born wanting to floss your teeth, didn't even have teeth. Right? But at some point you felt what it was like to have your teeth feel that way, and then you can't stand it. Nobody else is around you. You've now internalized the standard. So you have to internalize the standard called what it's like to walk around and truly have nothing on your mind. But it's a very awkward place to be. Scobie, you've tasted this, haven't you? Right? Yeah. Or these, you know, JR, you can attest to that. You've been around this game for a long time, right? And then, yes.
So I live on the left side of that chart, and I want to get to the upper right-hand corner. And so
Down here or here?
Both sides. Because, I'll tell you why. Because I'm a crazy maker. I'm really into coming up with what I believe is the right vision and working with others to come up with the right vision for where we should be. But I feel like others in my division live on the bottom right, and they've got no vision or just or flat out the wrong vision, but they're just managing to that wrong vision, and it makes me crazy. And I make them crazy because then I start spouting off about my vision and writing about it and emailing about it and, you know, piping up in meetings.
Right.
And then, but I feel like since I don't live within that structure in which everyone else in my division is living, then I feel like a victim.
Right.
Right? I feel, and so can you kind of give some, I think, you know, that's probably the case for a lot of people in Microsoft.
Help frame the conversation here. Wow, that's really great 20,000-foot stuff right there. You know, we really need to take that into consideration. Can we bump up to 40,000 for at least 10 minutes here, guys? Let me share that. See, they want to know that they're connected to something in that conversation. If you can start to help them connect the dots here. I had a guy, a very senior guy at GE Healthcare Systems, by the way, who used this model to help merge. They bought another company, and they had too big, the IT group there had to merge with another very big IT group. So what he did was he used this model. Now, we tend to go bottom up when we coach people because you're better off to start where people are and then work with them to get these real clear, so that when we coach people one-on-one, we put them through this process so that they get all the actions that they need to take. And then we say, okay, now what are all the projects driving these actions? And oh, by the way, pull out your job description right now. By the way, do you have a plan for the year? Oh, by the way, got any big vision stuff going on? And we tend to go bottom up because people can then, they can build on success. If you walk in here and people wrap around the axle here, good luck. Good luck. So the first thing to do is ask them where their attention is. If I had any of you right here, by the way, write down the top 10 things on your mind right now, I doubt very seriously any of you would put on there fulfilled destiny as human spirit on planet. What people will write down is cat food, babysitter quit, you know, car blew up, right? So if you don't meet people where they are not going to believe that there is any reality to what you're talking about. They'll go, yeah, there may be their reality, but they don't know mine, and then you're going to be the subject of your analysis. Oh God, there was a crazy maker again. You know, so you don't want that. You want all the transparent conversations, but at the appropriate levels, because you better take that vision. That vision better come down to what's the next action for you, and they need to see that demonstrated. What exactly is your next action then on that vision, dude? Right? Because if you're not mapping that behavior, you're expecting them to tie these knots together. It's called, you better tie them together too. Because I don't care how senior and sophisticated you are, if it don't come down to it, that next step on that is an email, or it's a waiting for that somebody else is waiting on, but you better have a next step about when do I need to light fire, check status on that thing, and what would that look like? You better be ready for that game so that you are responsible to yourself at all of these levels. Anyway, what Mike did, he started before what he did was he came in and said, look, we're going to understand the purpose before. I will not let the conversation drop down a level until we're on consensus as a coherent group about each one of these horizons. So he wouldn't even let them talk vision until they decided what's the purpose of this organization and what are our core values and standards. Until that was clear and agreed, he would never let any of these conversations happen. Once that was clear, he said, okay, guys, I think we're all ready to go to 40,000. Okay, let's talk about the vision. Now that we can know kind of we're all in this game together, yeah, where do we want to be? What would wild success look like? And until that was clear, he would not let them set a goal about how to get there. So he used this as a great map to help manage the conversations, because that's the problem. You come in, somebody wants to set a goal, somebody wants the next action, somebody wants to brainstorm, and you're going to shoot each other, and it's only because you didn't frame the horizon that you actually needed to have the conversation at and get consensus there. So I'd bring them in and say, hey guys, here's the issue. I'm thinking here, you're doing great work here. You know, I got issues down here sometimes with myself too. You know, we need to tie all these together. Where are we right now in this department? Which one of these things do we think we need to work on right now? I don't know. It depends on how transparent they are and how much you trust them, you know, in the process, and vice versa. Does that help?
Very much so.
Yeah, you got it. Sure. Sure.
So I have a question by proxy. Actually, a friend of mine from high school approached me last week and said, I'm thinking about GTD, and the question that threw me was, is there a particular personality type or situation where this will fail? And I've been paying attention to it for so long, I was totally taken aback, and I was like, I don't know. So I was
When you say this, what do you mean this?
that GTD as a whole, trying to adopt GTD as a whole.
Or trying to adopt it, or that the principles themselves fail?
I guess trying to adopt it.
Yeah, that's it. Yeah, 99% of the time.
I don't want to tell them.
Every personality style. I find very few people have really done this. Very few. Really, really done this. What I'm talking about.
The principal question.
The principles work. I've never seen any the principles work, and they seem to be universal. I've yet to find a right or left brain or a gender bias or a cultural bias for this. I've done this seminar in Dhahran. I've done it in Singapore. I've done it in Colombia. I've done this. This is the only, this seminar has been one of the biggest global banks right now. This is the only seminar that was done totally for partners and new hire analysts, all the way through. So I haven't seen anybody that's got to keep track of more than one thing they can't finish when they think of it needs some version of this if they want control and perspective. So I got it that simple. But in terms of personality styles, they'll do it for different reasons. Obviously, your crazy makers have a tougher time, sitting themselves down and defining projects. Everybody has trouble right here, 10,000 feet. It's the thing, you probably know, that is the toughest thing right now. The visionaries hate this because they actually have to get it down to that level of operational. Okay, so what exactly needs to be finished by whom to have your vision start to kickstart? Project, research, look into. So anybody sitting with problems and complaining about it is avoiding 10,000 feet because every problem is a potential project, to clarify, resolve, or handle, or at least research. Okay, so that's the level that everybody resists. But you got a lot of people that are more comfortable hanging here, a lot of people more comfortable hanging here, as I said. So oftentimes, I haven't seen any style one way or the other. They do it for different reasons. The party people like this because it makes for better parties. Right? The creative people, by the way, any of you know Evan Taubenfeld? He was Avril Lavigne's guitarist and writer and producer and boyfriend for years. And Avril, don't tell me you guys are too old already for this. Okay, well, Evan's 25 and major up-and-coming budding rock star, big GTD fan. I just interviewed him for End Conversation, by the way. So you'll hear Evan's talking about this, and he goes, this really is his productivity. I'm talking about right brain. I mean, right? And he said his productivity just went through the roof. And he said nobody could believe it. And 2 years later, he's still producing more songs, more albums, more juice, simply by being able to clear the deck. So interestingly enough, this has so little structure that a lot of the left-brainers go, wait, we need more features. We need more gizmo, yucko, things, color code tasks. And sorry, 07's harder for GTDers than 03. Just because it over then sophisticated, just simple flat little list making, for people. So so it's kind of like you can. The left brainers don't like this because it's too loose, too simple. The right brainers might not like this because they go, God, that's so anal. Look at all of your list. Oh my God, I don't want to do that. So you'll have an initial response that'll be very different. A lot of it has to do with people's conditioning about getting organized, because that's what people still think I'm the organizing guy. Frankly, I'm a disorganizing guy. I'm going to get you're trying to stay organized by keeping it all in your head. It's what you're using as a false sense of control. Highly vulnerable feels to unload things out of your mind. So, I'm trying to get people disorganized to be able to look at all of the stuff they're committed to. So in a sense, I really stir a pot there. So again, it depends on which part of this process, how you're perceiving this as to whether you'll take to it to begin with, and also, kind of the reason for doing it. If you're not moving very fast or far in your life, you won't take to this because this has changes in behavior, but it's only when the people that are interested in eliminating drag on the system. So everybody who's trying to move can feel drag get released when they start to do this. But I think for different reasons. But it's interesting. I had that question too. And I have yet to find anything. Maybe there's still some exceptions to what I just said, but I haven't seen it yet. Let me range around here. Yes, sir, in the back.
I was wondering, I think there could be clear benefits of applying something like this to work and career, but I was wondering if you've ever run against any resistance to people applying it to their social and personal life, or if you've personally experienced cases where friends or family are think that you're dehumanizing your contact with them, or making things so organized, whether it's your phone calls with them or your activities with them that it's kind of formalized and stuff.
Yeah, so the question is, do people oftentimes think this is a little anal retentive for your social life and your personal life? Yeah, most people have that, because most people's perception of what this is getting organized, and their perception of that is a mechanical thing. But that's why my new book is entitled Winning at the Game of Work and the Business of Life, because people need to lighten up a lot about this thing called work and get a lot more rigorous and business-like about the business of their life. You going to pick up the kids? Me. Wait a minute, soccer schedule? What about the summer? Are you going to handle that? What about the vacation? Did you get the stuff? I did get the stuff. Most people need half their vacation to rest from the last 3 days before they leave, right? So don't kid, who are you kidding? That if you don't handle the business of life in a business-like way, it will start to depersonalize your life. That's why Catherine and I will email each other sitting right next to each other in the same room. My wife and I, yeah, we got wireless at our house. And I'm literally sending her an email. Why? The last thing in the world, when she and I are together, that quality time, the last thing I want to do is take up that bandwidth with stuff that could be handled systemically. And she gets to then handle that in her own time without me interfaced, feeling like she has to make some decision about it. Come on, come on, you guys are in that world. Like if there wasn't value to virtualizing all this stuff, give me a break. What is it? I was on email before most of you were born. I don't know. 1983, AT&T, EasyLink. I've been there from the beginning. I had Radio Shack Model 100, man. Still, nobody's built a keyboard as good as that one. Now, some of you might be old enough to remember a Radio Shack Model 100. I have never yet found a keyboard anybody could do that could allow me to type that fast. Sorry. So anyway, that's kind of, yeah. So it's the business of life, and that's that. See, there's also an assumption that work is not fun, or that business-like things are not fun. Come on, then if that were true, you'd never play games. Yes, sir.
So one of the things that I've definitely, as an engineer, had trouble with is a desire to sort of go towards the control side through automation results in a loss of perspective. So automating things that are in the weekly review causes you to miss the more subtle things that sort of happen without you noticing during the
Right.
Can you talk a little bit about how to prevent it?
Yes. How do you use automation to prevent automation, or to prevent automatons?
Maybe I don't want to automate this.
Right. Well, you can automate a question called every 6 days, 4 hours, and 32 minutes. I want an alarm to ring that says, "Get crazy, dude!" And if you don't do something crazy, it's going to keep beating you up until you do. So I'm not quite sure about what you don't want to do is overstructure. You want to get just to that point where that's just enough. In other words, you want one lane in the middle of the road, not 25, right? But you want one lane, so that I don't have to worry about cars hitting me. But I don't want to have to drive down the road constantly think, based upon my horsepower, I'm supposed to be in lane 4, right? Then my brain would never be free to do anything else. So give yourself as little structure as you can deal with, or as you can do. Now, trust me, from the very beginning, I co-founded Actioneer in 1995. We've still got a couple of patents on there. It's called dump it out of your head and let the computer decide what it means. You guys still haven't really given it an in-basket yet. So that I could truly not have to think about anything, but just capture it and then have it automatically make that evident to me that has been undecided. So I am very much into function follows form. Let's create the right forms that then create the ability for us to be more spontaneous or more intuitive or move up to the higher levels. So I have a 50,000-foot mind map. I have mind maps on all of these. I have a little mind map that I pull up right to begin with where I can click on any one of these whenever I want. I click here at 20,000 feet, and there's one map over there that says fun, and it's mapped to movies and clicks on the local movies in Ojai and Ventura, because sometimes I forget, and Catherine loves movies. Now, it's not overstructuring me. It's giving me the opportunity to be able to have a reminder, because, see, I'm a bright, bauble baby like there ever was one. Any of you like me? I can resist anything but temptation, right? So that's cool. Wow, that's cool. So my whole trip of self-management is building blinders in my life. What are the blinders I need to put on so that I can only see this far? Oh, that's right. So the smart part of me has to build in the blinders that have me looking at what I need to look at the horizon I need to look at it, but then not forget, and get too wrapped around the axle there. Quite frankly, and you'll see in my new book, there really is a simple answer. Just start paying attention to what has your attention. That's the ultimate answer. Start paying attention to what has your attention. Because if you then don't give appropriate attention to what has your attention, it will start to take more of your attention than it deserves. And once you handle what has your attention, you'll find out then what really has your attention.
What has your attention is playing with your lists and playing with your system. How do you get out of that?
Why should you?
Because
It's a great hobby. It's a great hobby. What you haven't really done, and this is not against you, this is the answer for everybody, what you haven't done is figure out what's the purpose of these things, because once you figure that out, then fulfill that purpose, then get on with it. People say, yes, I'm constantly kind of researching out there because it's kind of an interesting hobby, but I've got a clear head. I've got very, very good tools. But I just walked around your new research center. What do they call it? Will, what is that? Or did Will leave? Anyway, I walked around your thing with all the glass, all the screens and all the cool stuff or whatever, but it still doesn't map to the way my brain works yet. So I'm sitting there looking at, okay, here's how I would change this or what I would do, on this so that it would then serve me when I sat down to do exactly what I needed to do, in terms of how that works. So I just start to pay attention to what has my attention and how do I build tools to then manage that process. That's how I came up with all this anyway. I mean, you don't have to do a weekly review if you don't need it. That's why I say, one of the buzz things is like, gee, read the new book about when you shouldn't set goals. When shouldn't you set goals? Well, when you're not home. I mean, your body's there, but no light on your porch. If any of you ever had one of those days that was just one of those days, and you were in 6 meetings, beat up in 5 of them, and by 5 o'clock your brain was scrambled eggs. You couldn't have a creative thought if it kissed you in the face. That's not the time to set goals. That's the time to fill your stapler. Hi, I'm going to be constructive. My CTO, by the way, has a list called Brain Dead. He really does. Because he's doing all that kind of intense work, but he's still got a bunch of dummy stuff that he's still got to do. He just keeps track of what those are. That's very smart. You know why? Because when you truly are brain dead, you can't remember those things. Right? So he's smart enough that when he's smart to realize he's not going to be smart all the time, so he builds in blinders in his life to show him what he needs to see at the appropriate times, so when he's kind of thick and stupid, he can still be constructive and beyond. There's nothing wrong with being thick and stupid, unless some part of you feels guilty. Hey, I'm now thick and stupid. Let me do some thick and stupid things. I'm on. I'm a high performer. Kind of thick and stupid, but I'm on. Time's disappeared. I am now lost in what I'm doing. That's all I want. So these are, there's no prescription here. That's all these things just came up that said, well, I found that if I'm not looking at 10,000 foot, if I'm not looking at all these commitments that I've got of things to finish on at least a 7-day basis, this thing starts to eat at me. And I start to then feel uncomfortable that I'm making good judgment calls about what I'm doing. So that's how we figured out, look, the weekly review has got to include probably that level of things at that particular horizon. But that's kind of all it is. So it's kind of nice to have checklists that you built in, can automate that, but be careful. Don't overdo it. Just do just as much as you need. Yeah?
Just to make things a little more concrete for me, how do you organize your day? How often do you go back to your lists? How often?
Yeah. Good question. How do I organize my day? Well, I don't live a very consistent lifestyle. I mean, the only thing I can do consistently is wake up. And sometimes that's in question, but, okay, I'll answer. What I do, the very first thing I do is I look at the calendar. That's the hard landscape. Those are the things that, either me or it dies or I don't get another opportunity if I don't show up there at that time. Second thing is what do I need to know about or do on that day that's not tied to a time? That's why you guys still haven't built in anything but an all-day event bar up at the top, and I still have to kludge that around. There's a way you can work that around to set it up, but it's not an instantly obvious thing to be able to do. Hey, I need to call Bill Friday. Anytime's fine, just got to get it done on Friday. Click. So I want to see that too. And third, CJR after it. He's an Outlook guy. Okay. And then the third thing I want to know is what do I want to know about today? I'm supposed to get a FedEx from my office today. I need to know that. So I don't really do. So those are the 3 things on my calendar. That's the hard landscape. What do I have to do specific to time? What do I have to do specific to the day before the day ends? And what do I need to know about or on that day? I need to know who I was meeting here today. I needed to know directions to appointments. I need to know that my wife is going to be in a seminar all day. I need to know they're shutting the server down between 3 and 4. I need to know da-da-da-da. And all that's on my calendar. The very first thing I see is the hard landscape. The next thing that I do is, okay, I've got windows. When I have a window, then I say, okay, well, probably what I'm going to do is process email right then. It kind of depends. I say I'm just processing email when I'm never not doing anything else. I just want to make sure it's at 0 every 24 to 48 hours so that I know I won't have missed something that I needed to see. Now, I do emergency scanning like you guys do too. Most of you live in emergency scanning, but we do it from time to time, meaning, okay, I will just glance to see if there are any fun things or jokes or quick YouTubes, or mission critical stuff, I need to see. But I try to get that as clean as possible. And then if I have discretionary time during the day, which the hard landscape lets me know, what's discretionary? What do I have choice now about this next hour? Okay. I want to see what's coming up next. Okay, what do I need to do? How's my energy? How much time is it? Is it 20 minutes? Do I have 2 hours? And all those are variables that are going to make choices. Then come into play all my action lists. My action lists are organized by context. So if you're not familiar with the GTD recommendation there, we found once you decide the very next physical action on things, sort them by where those actions occur or what tool is required to do that action. It's easier to see it. So at a phone, I want to see every phone call from everything on my calls list. At my computer, I want to see every single thing at the computer. So many times I don't need to see any of those lists because I'm not in the context, there. But if I am, then I want to see all of those things. And I may glance at those. In truth, I don't hardly even glance at those. What really makes a difference is that I've captured on them everything that needs to happen, and my weekly review is really the key. The weekly review is once a week. I sit down and clean up everything, get all the lists current, so that it only takes a second to glance at them to know what I'm not doing today because you just surprised me. So I just need to trust. I do whatever I need to do to maintain that system so that the system is a complete inventory down at all these horizons, so that at any point in time I can glance at them. And sure, I'll want to take a look at them. Now, the truth is I have now built an overlay because I've now needed, in the last year and a half, I've needed a way to filter even out of all of that. Okay, David, what are the key things now if you have strategic time today? So I keep another mind map, which is just a me mind map. That right now I'm using Mind Manager for that. And basically it has a map to all of this. It has a leg that says key projects right now. They're also on my project list, but I want to know the 5 or 6 or 8 right now that are going to have the highest leverage to me if I move those forward and mature my thinking more about them. So I've got action items about them, so it is a little bit of a double entry. And I have another leg that says next few days. Actually, I look at the next 10 days, and there's some things not typical in my world, and I want to see all those. I've got a London trip, I've got the book launch, I've got this big meeting, I've got a thing with my attorney coming up that's coming at me, and I just want to kind of see that so I see a little bit of an extension of that kind of hard landscape about new stuff coming toward me. And I found that's as simple as I could get to be able to quickly get a glance, and I can see a whole snapshot of my life right there. And that's the one that I'm often coming into once and twice a day. Those of you who do weekly reviews, sometimes I need to do like a weekly review twice a day now. I can't wait a week to sit down and see it because they change so fast now. Things are coming at me. So for the most part, I'm not, if you took a stopwatch and said, how much time am I actually looking in the system? Not much. Seconds a day. I just spend the quality time to ensure that I don't need to look at it more than that. See, if you're not doing weekly reviews like I'm talking about, where I'm truly catching all this stuff up and really bringing up the rear guard. How many of you would say in the last 3 or 4 days there have been at least 2 or 3 situations, if not a half a dozen, that have shown up that you are now responsible to get closure on, but you haven't had time to sit down and define it yet as a project or what to do about it. You just know you got it. So when do you do that, folks? And you're not going to do it by answering emails and talking on the phone. You've got to hold the world back, and that's that kind of review. Me too, man. I've had just stuff in the last 48 hours. I've been hit with a fire hose of cool opportunities. And I haven't sat down and cleaned that up yet. So I need to just trust that that's not going to go too long before I'm going to sit down and clean all that stuff up. Then all it takes is a quick glance. See, if you're not doing that kind of review, there's a part of you that's trying to be thinking that way all the time but never completing it. So you're constantly thinking, I need to be more strategic, I need to be more strategic, because you never finish that. Once you actually finish that conversation, then I just kind of shoot down the middle and just go, okay, what do I feel like doing? Once you actually handle this, then just do whatever you feel like doing. And be adult enough and mature enough to go ahead and do what you feel like doing and deal with the consequences and course correct. So you never get rid of that game. As a matter of fact, what you want to do is do this so you can set it up so that that's the game you're playing. Because that can never be computerized or systematized. That's what the system is for, is to allow that freedom. Now, that's probably a longer answer than what you were asking for. But again, the day could be, then I'm at all-day meetings, so I'm sitting there, that's very different than, wow, I got 3 hours on a plane where I'm going to be doing very different things. So I've just set up those. So I have essentially the only thing I really need, and to keep my head totally clear, these 2 things right here. And this is the one that's with me all the time. This is about 50% of the time. This is just a trio that has all my lists on it. So I might need to access them and call stuff. But that's it. That's all it is. There's the last 12 hours of stuff that's shown up that I've just captured that will get into the system. So even if I needed this, I'd write a note to get back to this to then get back to them. So all I've got is a lifeline here to keep it out of the psyche. And I know that each one of these pieces of paper will land in my in-basket. Right, there's the last 24 hours. Right? Yeah, be careful. But it's nowhere else. So you're just looking at a bunch of crudely captured placeholders of every single thing in the last 48 hours that has popped into my world that I have yet to make a decision about, but there might be something useful about it. And so this will get dealt with probably on some plane to San Francisco or Dallas or wherever I'm going, to then clean that up. So I'm constantly cleaning. It takes an hour to hour and a half a day just for fresh input, just to put it through this drill of capturing it, deciding what it means, organizing it appropriately, handling it, doing the 2-minute stuff, and just keeping all that current. So then I'm switching between stuff off my list, ad hoc stuff that I'm doing instead of what's on my list, but I can do it freely because of my lists are complete, and then the hour and a half the day that I'm spending making sure my lists are complete. The threefold nature of work: doing defined work, doing work ad hoc as it shows up, or defining your work. And those are the three options constantly. We're all doing one of those as we switch, as we go through the day. And I have no other prescription than that, because God knows, sometimes I'm cleaning up at 9 at night and sometimes I'm not. Sometimes I go, I'll deal with it later. Thanks, good question.
Maybe 2 more questions. Maybe we have time to sign books.
Oh, we're going to sign books too. So 2 more questions. How do I make a choice like this? Right on the front. Yeah, yes, sir.
You go a little deeper into mind mapping. Why you use that?
Go a little deeper into mind mapping. Well, mind mapping is just, Tony Buzan years ago coined the term. Basically the idea that you capture ideas as they occur to you and then connect the dots as they start to connect to you, because that's how your brain tends to think. I use it for all kinds of things. This is 90% of my project planning. I got about 150 mind maps working right now. Everything from my dream house to organizing tons of things that I'll use, mind maps. The neat thing about this is this will connect to, tasks and views and Outlook or Lotus Notes or, any of that stuff, or URLs. So these are great. It's a great integrating tool. So I can use that to tie a whole lot of stuff all over the computer, but see it visually. Oh yeah, I use it for all kinds of stuff out there. Mind Manager. They're in conversation with you guys, I think. Yeah.
You mentioned gtdiq.com site.
Yes.
And there's a survey up there.
Yes, there is a gtdiq.com. There is a survey, yes.
Could you talk a little bit about how frequently we are supposed as end users to take the survey and...
How frequently should you take the survey?
Yes, how many responses you've got so far and what's the distribution of them?
Yeah, it's interesting. I haven't seen a lot of the statistics in terms of what everybody's doing from all over the place. We just made it public. As a matter of fact, we made it public as soon as I put the book out, because there's a reference in there where the people can now go get it. It used to be hidden inside of our GTD Connect, which is a membership behind the wall, part of our library in terms of what we do. Well, we've got it out there right now. We did enough, by the way, with our internal Connect membership people, and we have 1,500, some 22,000 people that were taking this initially when we started to set this up, and we worked with the people, people out of, forget the name right now, but that's what they do, is they design surveys and know how to test that. So they're weighted appropriately based upon the curve of how people did that. And basically you'll show up with a dot here based upon those simple questions. Because it took us a long time what are the right questions to ask to let you know kind of where you are on the game here. And the truth is, you can take it as often as you want. As a matter of fact, on the computer it keeps track of where you were. So you can see on this date you were here, on this date you were here, on this date you were here. Because it could change in the course of an afternoon. You could be in one place versus the other. Some of them are more kind of lifestyle that might not change a lot in terms of, gee, do you really feel like is email really under control or not? Well, that may change in hours, but do you really have a sense that you're living the life you want to live? That kind of question, where you park yourself on it as an answer to that is probably not going to shift a whole lot over a period of a few hours. But some of the things will. So it's kind of interesting. I do it for myself. Sometimes I wind up here. Sometimes I'm here. Sometimes I'm here. Sometimes I fall down here. So there's really no pattern to it yet. We haven't been rigorous enough to know what the statistical part of it is. We'll probably analyze it when we have more data. We probably will in terms of stuff, but there need to be a purpose on it. Mainly it's just a personal reflection mechanism right now, so you kind of take a look and say, well, okay, well, that makes sense to me or not. And whether it maps appropriately or not, you'd have to decide, for yourself. So the hook came out. They want me to sign books now, so thank you, folks.